I guess one thing we could get into before we take patron questions, were you surprised to see this morning that Ken Klippenstein resigned from the resigned, he didn't resign from the internet, from the Intercept, excuse me. And he had some comments on his way out. I thought it was badass of him for speaking up. He said he wants to do, reporting that matters to people without the, just the trying to please the very coastal elites. He was talking about advertisers being from, petrol companies and defense contractors. And those aren't the people that he wants to reach. And he also talked a little bit about the Intercept management structure. If we scroll down here, why he's starting something new. I resigned from the Intercept today in order to pursue a new kind of journalism here at Substack, are more hard-hitting and what's possible than in the corporate world. The Intercept has been taken over by suits who have abandoned its founding mission of fearless and adversarial journalism, and I can't continue in an environment where fear of funders is more important than journalism itself. On a brighter note, though, I'm leaving DC to move back to Wisconsin, excited to embrace independence both in my journalism and from the Washington bubble. The reason so much of the news media sucks is they aren't writing for you. They're writing for their sources in Washington, for the industries they cover, for rich people, and for fancy awards committees. Just take a look at the ads they run for investment banks, defense contractors, and oil companies. Unless you're in the market for any of these products, they aren't writing for you. I want to write for you. Holy shit, Ken, I'm about to fork over a wad of cash to you. That's a sales pitch. That's what we need in this country. And I just thought it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad to see this as well. Although I do like a lot of the Intercept's reporting. I think that Ken's spot on with his criticisms of the direction the company's going in. And, just as a side note, they send way too many goddamn fundraising emails. It's really annoying, to be honest, considering
literally every day, a couple times a day.
Yeah. It's like, come on, bro. I mean, it would be one thing if our show was sending that many fundraising emails. We actually need that kind of money. They have a fucking billionaire founder. So it's
they would argue that they do real journalism and they go to court, so they actually need that money.
That's true. I just mean fill in the blank with any media company that's not funded by a fucking billionaire. They could actually use small dollar donations, but I get why they do it. We've had that conversation with Ryan before. But yeah, there's some pretty interesting details in here as well about how, for the first time in the company's history, now the editor-in-chief has to answer to the CEO or something like that. Yeah, as of Monday, the new editor-in-chief now answers to the CEO. That's for the first time in the Intercept's history. So that's definitely a change in the way things are done. And here's an interesting graph as well showing the company's org chart and kind of depicting how top heavy it has become, as Ken puts it. So you can see up here, you have the CEO, and then down here, there's the HR vendor, the chief digital officer, the general counsel, the chief strategy officer, the chief of staff, the interim EIC, and then under those people are folks like Ryan Grimm. And then under folks like Ryan Grimm are people like Ken Klippenstein. So, yeah, I mean, can you imagine having to go through that many different, people to approve your story or to get the okay on a piece of reporting? It would be really annoying. It would be really, difficult.
Yeah, making the case that you can't afford to have these editorial reporters, making the case that you constantly need to have these layoffs. Meanwhile, you have such an inflated. I mean, these are everybody's salary for the Intercept, for what it's worth, is public. So you can see how many people are making loads of cash, and you're like, wait, you can't afford to pay somebody $85,000 to do investigative journalism for you in DC. You can't afford to pay somebody that's more senior $135,000 to go out there and do fucking reporting for you. Yes, you can. You're choosing not to. And it would be easy to take shots at the people that don't do good publishing on the journalism side, like people that we've always kind of eye rolled at the Intercept, like James Risen, who was a huge Russiagator, and I thought really debased the Intercept during that time period by constantly cheerleading for Russiagate as his only contribution. Meanwhile, he's taking up hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary just because he did some good reporting, and admittedly done more good reporting than I'll ever do back in the early aughts. But a lot of people are like, okay, legacy reporting shouldn't be, especially when you're making cuts, it should be about what you're producing now. And then on top of that, you have the entire, left portion of the chart, which is just, strategy and ops and, critical thinkers and whatnot. Basically people who are taking food out of the mouth of the actual reporters who are doing the work. Like, I'm not saying you don't need a little bit of strategy, but I think the bulk of the strategy should be coming from the lead counsel and the editor in chief, right? And you sent me, Gavin, a tweet from Ryan Grimm, where he actually, announced that him and Jeremy Scahill have made an offer. It's been reported accurately that Jeremy and I have proposed that the board resign and turn management of it over to us. I would be super excited about that. Would you, Gavin?
Oh yeah, dude. That's kind of what I'm hoping happens. Although, to be honest, I have no idea if there's any actual likelihood that it does. I mean, it seems like when an organization or a company like the Intercept has become as corporate as it has, it would be almost impossible for the board to just be like, yep, we're all going to resign. Here you go, Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill. That doesn't really seem like it's actually going to happen, but I sure hope it does. And I totally agree with Ryan that it's definitely in the best interests of the institution and its mission.
Yeah, and it also echoes really plainly a lot of the criticisms of people who have already left the Intercept. I'm talking about one of its founding members, chiefly the guy that's responsible for getting the Intercept off the ground. It was, him and Laura Poitras reporting on Edward Snowden that got First Look Media off the ground, that made Piero Midyar, decide, hey, we want to pursue this venture and do this. He was like, man, it's not what we set out to do anymore. And also to Laura Poitras' credit, she left early on to go pursue what she wanted to do and just being like, I am not going to compromise what I have to say. I'm not going to be worried about what funders are going to say about what I have to report. If it's a story, I'm not going to be, challenged on publishing it. Glenn, for the most part, had like straight direct to publish authority on the Intercept, and I think he demanded that. And when they started to infringe even on him, even on the Golden Boy, even on the dude who started it all, the Michael Jordan of the Intercept, it means it's going to be a downward slope for everybody. And I think Zaid Jilani's left the Intercept now. We have had disagreements with Zaid Jilani, but recently I was pretty happy with his commentary. I don't even think Lee Fong is full-time at the Intercept, though that might be wrong. He might still be there. But I'm trying to think. It's a narrow list of guys. Mehdi Hassan's gone, obviously. Used to be a big contributor there. Brianna Joy Gray, a long time ago, she was a contributor there. It just seems like they've really fallen off from their apex, which to me was like 2018.
Yeah, totally. And if you take a look here, there's a pretty interesting story from Ken about their decision to write a story about Jeff Bezos, the billionaire founder of Amazon.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. He says it was a straightforward article detailing Bezos' $50 million charity grant to the retired Admiral William McRaven, calling the contribution a racket. The story seemed like vintage Intercept fare. One of our founders, Jeremy Scahill, made an excellent Academy Award nominated documentary about McRaven. My story was essentially
okay. So this is interesting, guys, because that's the Dirty Wars documentary. And Ken Klippenstein actually favorited my tweet about this when they first started doing this reporting. I remember when it came out, this guy is a fucking psychopathic criminal. Okay, this guy, it's absolutely insane. He killed people with no arrest warrants. I mean, just burst through the door, killed people, said they were terrorists, responsible for tons of massacre. I mean, this guy is a bloodthirsty fucking war criminal. Watch that documentary, Dirty Wars. It's on Amazon for like $3 and worth every penny.
Yep. I forgot about that connection. You did mention that you were just watching that when you read their article or something like that.
I watched the documentary the night before. Like, you could literally go check out my letterbox and it'll be like, I logged Dirty Wars like the day they dropped that article. And I remember being like, holy shit. Because I watched the Jeremy Scahill interview the victims of that, the people who watched those people die that night. And it was just, I believe, in like a northern part of Afghanistan. And God knows what other examples there are of this. And the horrible things happened. Like, to make sure that they never got caught, after they shot the people, they excavated the bullets from their bodies so it wouldn't be connected back to United States Special Forces. Like, these guys were cold-blooded psychopaths. And Jeff Bezos is giving him a $50 million charity grant. Oof. Fucking disgusting.
Yeah. And of course, Ken's totally right that's totally classic, Intercept fare. Doesn't seem like there would typically be anything wrong with publishing a story like that. But it says, enter the Intercept's general counsel, David Brallo, who said he had problems with the article, not legal concerns, but instead he thought it was inopportune, saying that attacking Bezos might not sit well with the Intercept's own billionaire owner, Piero Midyar, especially at a time when he was keeping the organization afloat. Isn't he always keeping the organization afloat? Isn't that kind of the whole structure?
Also, the number one criticism that people ourselves have included is that it's not real independent journalism over at the Intercept because of this exact conundrum here. Somebody at the editorial level is going to say, hey, don't piss this guy off because he's a donor, right? I could think of examples that I cannot mention now from local reporters in Kansas City where it's like, hey, bro, like this is a publicly funded thing. And you know who means publicly funded, like it's checks from people. And those people read this, and you can't just talk shit like you want to. And that's a problem with local media. That's a problem with corporate media. And that's why independent media, we always advertise we're only beholden to our readers and listeners, right? Even Gavin and I, who do not consider ourselves reporters, do not consider ourselves journalists. I mean, outside of the fact that we do casual interviews. So in that sense, like, the Hollywood Babylon and Fat Man on Batman are journalists too. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people fucking conduct interviews. But when you're working specifically on the kind of, reporting that Ken is, which is national security state, which is intel and all that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, you want to have the ability to publish that shit and criticize the most powerful people. That's what your fucking job is. And anyway, shout out to Ken for having a fucking monster backbone. One time we did a segment where we roasted Ken pretty hard because he said that he didn't find the Julian Assange case very interesting. And
I forgot about that.
He's done a lot of fucking really incredible work. I sat cattywampus to him one time at dinner. He seems like a lovely guy. And so really excited to read his Substack.
Yeah, definitely. Super excited to read Ken's Substack as well. I'm sure the great reporting will continue, and I totally sympathize with his, listed reasons for wanting to get the hell out of there, given just how much bureaucracy seemed to be in place. I mean, could you imagine having to check a story with like general counsel and then having to hear their stupid bullshit opinion on what the billionaire funder is going to think of that? It's not conducive to good journalism, obviously, although a lot of it still happens at the Intercept. I always enjoy reading Ryan Grimm's work, and that's why I hope that him and Scahill are able to actually take over the organization from those, board members.
Yeah, dude, Jeremy Scahill's another dude. That's a motherfucker, man. That's a motherfucker right there. You read his books. I read Blackwater. Insanity, And the fact that, like, yeah, anyway, he when he was like questioned, you can go read. He was like brought before like Congress, and they were like, grilling him, and then he goes on like Bill Maher's show, and they're like, "Aren't you worried about being shot?" Like, this dude did real ass reporting. So anyway, shout out to Jeremy Scahill and Ryan Grimm. I don't begrudge them for trying to hold it down and save the Intercept. We were talking about it, Ryan. I mean, he has access to the White House correspondence room. I mean, he can actually challenge, Joe Biden's administration directly, and he has. I've watched him do it on issues like Haiti. I've watched him do it on issues like Israel Palestine. Watched him do it on things like Pakistan. I think it's really valuable to have him in there, so I don't begrudge him for that, even though I really hope that they turn the Intercept around and fat solidarity fists up to Ken Klippenstein for getting the fuck out of there.
Absolutely.